Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host, with another marvelous video. The 4th season of The Boys is here, and there's a lot of changes and developments in the story of this world of evil superheroes. It's always taken an attempt at poking fun at real-world events. Who can forget the Imagine sequence from Season 3 poking fun at the celebrities singing John Lennon's song during the pandemic? But sometimes these jokes have been entirely political, and it seems that the latest season has directly managed to reference real-world politics with some of the fresh faces in the series. As Homelander wanted to add people with their views to the Seven, he made an exciting choice by making Sister Sage and Firecracker the candidates. The two are opposite, and it peculiarly makes sense. However, many questions are associated with Firecracker, the controversial figure in Seven. Let's answer some of these questions as we try to gather everything we know about her. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Does Firecracker have a role in The Boys comics? Over the years, The Boys has strayed away from its source material in the comics while keeping events and characters. Soldier Boy was a welcome addition to the franchise, and we got to witness various characters inspired by the comic book versions, even though the show did its own take on these characters. But there's a lot of characters who are original creations for the series, and they managed to make an impact. Firecracker has a unique role and influence that might have intrigued fans. Her distinctiveness as an original character might have caught the attention of the fans, especially when they realized that Translucent, another original character, was the very first victim of The Boys. There have also been renditions of the comic book characters who have appeared in the series. Soldier Boy makes it clear that he was intended to be a parody of Captain America, but The Boys took this concept to new heights. Similarly, other characters like A-Train are also given an arc that's continuously evolving. Now he seems to be taking the side of the Boys and working against the Supes. Let's hope it doesn't cause significant change, because Homelander's already onto him for leaking information and saving Huey during the bloodbath sequence. However, there's always a purpose in adding these renditions to the characters, as fans might have noticed that Ryan, who's not in the comic book, plays an exciting role in the series. While he's a crazy part of the idea of an offspring born with the abilities, Ryan also humanizes Butcher, who was quite ruthless in the comic books. The latest season might focus on this arc much more and give Butcher a chance to redeem himself. Season 4 of The Boys has introduced two fresh faces to the Seven, adding a new layer of intrigue to the show. These characters, with their unique abilities and backstories, promise to be a fascinating addition to the series. Fans might remember Hayward from her role as Dina Pilgrim in Powers, where she quite ironically played the role of someone critical of superheroes. The surprise element of these new characters, Sister Sage and Firecracker, played by Susan Hayward and Valerie Curry, being original creations for the show and not having any mention in the comic books, might have excited fans. Even though fans might not connect them to comic books, they follow the tradition and are like a satirical take on some characters from the superhero world of Marvel and DC. During one scene, fans might have noticed that Sage asks Firecracker to show her powers, and she generates some sparks with her fingers. Does that remind you of a particular character from Marvel? While she might be a take on a Marvel character, the politics and opinions might make her someone we've never seen among other superheroes. Firecracker represents alt-right figures in the US, and the writer and showrunner Eric Kripke has gone for the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. During her convention in the series, fans might have noticed that she's in leagues with those conspiracy theorists who came into the light with their Trump support, and she won't be afraid to declare that she shot her pets openly. Finally, Alex Jones might like that a character like this made it into the Seven, a much-needed requirement for extremist political personalities. Something like this making it into the series isn't surprising, because in the past there have been characters who represent this reality. Fans might have noticed the character of Cameron Coleman, played by Matthew Edison, who's the host of the Cameron Coleman Hour on the Vought News Network, who's kinda similar to a real-life figure like Tucker Carlson, even though he might seem like a rendition of J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man films, particularly those with Tom Holland. Yeah, that one was very familiar with the Alex Jones vibe in his home setting. Backstory of Firecracker. Apart from being controversial, Firecracker has some interesting arcs that might be intertwined with some of the series' previously known characters. These arcs, while controversial, add a layer of depth and intrigue to the character, making her a fascinating addition to the series next to our usual group of heroes. From the first episode of the 4th season, we saw growth in this character as she went from being a YouTuber with controversial opinions to being a member of the most contentious group of heroes in the world, the Seven. Even though we don't know much about this character's origins, we get insight into her hatred of Starlight based on their past. The two had been on the Supe pageant circuit together for 3 years, and Firecracker went by the name Sparkler back then. But things had gone wrong for young Firecracker when facing off against Starlight because of the particular situation that Starlight had been through under her mother's influence. Her mother had always taught her to be ruthless when put up against competition, so she did the horrible deed that'd be the perfect origin story for Firecracker. During one such pageant, the Miami-Dade, Firecracker and Starlight were the finalists and were set to face off against each other for the win. But Annie, under her mother's influence, ended up spreading rumors about Sparkler that she'd only managed to get into the finals was because she'd given some sexual favors to the judges. When she went to confront Starlight, the latter called her a fat slut and walked away. Since she was just 13 years old, it impacted her, and she had to leave the pageants. It seems that Starlight had no idea about the impact of the rumor on the life of Firecracker. The first time we see her in the series is when she comments on her show, The Truth Bomb with Firecracker, regarding Roland Keating, Homelander's human victim. According to her, Roland Keating was a pedophile who got caught, and that very much explains his death at the hands of Homelander. Later, when the boys investigate Sister Sage, they come across the TruthCon event, which is described as an event primarily focused on the reality of various conspiracy theories. There can be a complete video on the number of conspiracy theories referenced at this event. There were minions who were also referenced as a part of some slavery conspiracy. We then see a particular event at this convention where Firecracker does a live version of a show in front of a like-minded audience. We'll not talk much about her assistant Splinter, except that he was a close friend with a giant crush on her. Firecracker gives a talk about the various conspiracy theories that have been covered up, including one of the rumors about Tom Hanks being a pedophile. After the event, Sister Sage comes up to talk to her and tries to hire her, but before that, she asks her to show her powers. This scenario would be the first time we witness Firecracker's true powers. It's pretty okay and might remind you of some character from the X-Men. Have you still not guessed who it is yet? Anyway, Sister Sage had asked Firecracker to meet at a particular hall, and later, the boys went and set up surveillance in the hall. But it was a trap, and Sister Sage asked Firecracker to kill them as part of a final test for what we'd only find later to be the chance to become a member of the Seven. Even though Splinter managed to make copies of himself, which was his power, so that the boys could be overpowered, Kimiko managed to beat up Firecracker. But then Splinter manages to put down Kimiko with a bullet to the head, and Firecracker takes the opportunity to go live on a platform and report about the events. Little did they know that the boys had one member waiting for the chance, and Butcher showed up and put her down. They managed to kill the main Splinter, but also the other Splinter copies. Firecracker manages to run away before the boys can do anything, but then the boys don't intend to do anything to her, and they let her escape. But it was a mistake. The next time we see her, she becomes a member of the Seven at an event hosted by Homelander. But even after becoming a member of the elite group of Supes, she continues to spread her rumors and goes on to explain that the vaccine supplied by the Starlighters was spreading autism. While Homelander is surprised by Sister Sage's request to add her to the team, Sage explains that she's the ideal candidate for the time being because of her pure hatred for Starlight. Meanwhile, Firecracker will do anything to work on this opportunity, and she makes that clear to Homelander in a rather uncomfortable manner. Firecracker, a one-woman fireworks show with superpowers. Now that we have some sense of this new addition to Vaught's The Seven, let's look at her powers because she's part of a team with quite an interesting set of powers. Over the years, fans might have noticed that the superhero team's primary members have abilities similar to those of popular superhero groups like the Justice League. But recently, as mentioned, some lesser-known characters in the superhero world have been referenced in the series. If you haven't guessed yet, Firecracker has powers that make her very similar to Marvel's Jubilee. Firecracker can generate sparks using her fingers, and even though Sister Sage mentions that it looks lackluster, she also mentions that she has superhuman strength. Later, during a fight with Kimiko, we witnessed her strength as the two almost matched each other. In general, Kimiko's superpowered punches might prove fatal, but they don't seem to have much effect when thrown at Firecracker. This fact demonstrates that she's durable and can cope with many attacks from her peers or other Supes. Finally, the one thing similar with almost all the Supes is that she has superhuman hearing, which allows her to listen to higher frequencies that are not audible to normal humans. Firecracker also wields a Glock 17, which she's generally seen holstering with herself and using in combat. Some fans might feel like she's a version of Peacemaker in this superhero universe, because according to a character in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, she's the last true blue American patriot. Plus, she carries a gun, which is quite rare, as only Gunpowder and Soldier Boy are the two other Supes who carry a firearm. While Sister Sage was right about the lackluster feel of the first time we witnessed Firecracker's powers, we might see a much more excellent representation of her powers later in the series. Since the character's based on Jubilee, we might see her use her power to attack her opponents. Remember when Jubilee was laughed at for her silly Firecracker-like powers in the X-Men comic book in the animated series? Her powers were considered so lackluster that the movies never allowed her to prove herself. Later on, the animated series and some particular issues of the comic books allowed us to witness the full scale of Jubilee's powers, one of the most extraordinary things ever. Maybe Sister Sage's remark was intended to bring out the best in Firecracker, and maybe now that she's a member of Seven, she'll get to work on her powers more. But that'd only happen when she stopped with her conspiracy theories and political ambitions, which affect her personality. Considering Starlight also took her time to use her powers to their full potential, it might be interesting to see Firecracker do the same, and then we might witness them going against each other, an arc under development ever since the two were kids. It'd be an ideal story, considering it'd see Starlight as someone with a past that led to Firecracker becoming who she is. Marvelous verdict. Interestingly, the boys would reference the X-Men, considering the arc of the boys is the antithesis of the X-Men. While the X-Men are about humans against superior beings, the boys favor these superior beings and make them the villains. Firecracker is a perfect addition to the Seven, considering she has her shtick while the others follow in the footsteps of Homelander. But she has some crazy feelings for Homelander, which might change as she continues working with him. On the other hand, Sister Sage's character becoming a part of this team is an absolute irony, because she's a genius who was never respected. I have to say, Homelander knew how to scout for his candidates, because now he seems to have the upper hand on the boys. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.